Welcome to Hobby Clubhouse with a review of the Bandai high-grade Universal Century 1144 Psycho Gundam. The long-awaited release of the high-grade Psycho Gundam Mark II has led to a surge of people also becoming interested in this OG Psycho Gundam by association. And of course, this is a companion review to the Mark II whenever I manage to get one of those. Okay, story time. If you bought the Psycho Gundam precisely because of the Psycho Gundam Mark II, then you may have noticed that the two MSs look nothing like each other, and that has to do with where the Psycho Gundam came from in the first place. So, the Psycho Gundam was originally designed by Katsushi Murakami, this man right here. And this was his original sketch, which was later slightly cleaned up by Kazumi Fujita. Murakami is a legend in tokusatsu and classic pre-Gundam era super robot circles. Particularly, it was his iconic designs that graced numerous Chogokin robot toys that sold massive numbers, and that made him a big deal for Bandai. I mean, if you look at the Psycho Gundam next to the Daitetsujin 1-7, both designed by Murakami, you can definitely see the DNA of his designs. So when Z Gundam was in production, Bandai requested that a design from Murakami be put into the show, and what we got was this draft design for a mobile suit which didn't yet have a name or an identity or anything. It presented a bit of a problem for director Yoshiyuki Tomino because, well, this looks nothing like anything else designed for the show. The main designer for Zeta, Kazumi Fujita, who cleaned up the Psycho Gundam design, gave us radical designs of interweaving geometry and shapes that merge and add into one another and change their contours as they moved. Murakami's signature style is far different. His designs can be understood if you take any of his work and then flatten it onto a 2D plane, and that'll give you a tapestry of geometric shapes and colors. It's audacious how he builds his designs up with all that basic geometry, but I'm sure you can see the magic and allure of it. The problem remains that this looks very boxy, almost like the Sid Mead style of a lumbering robot, and in the end, director Tomino got frustrated. You see, Bandai wanted Murakami's designs in the show because they thought his designs would sell toys, and because Bandai were the sponsors, there was no way for Tomino to refuse and they just had to figure it out. Tomino's final answer was to make the Psycho Gundam into a backhand slap to Bandai. He made it a big lumbering giant that threatens to crush everything standing in its way, as a metaphor for Bandai throwing their weight around and ruining everything in its path. Seriously. This is what the Psycho Gundam is. It's a 40-meter f*** you. So, if you ever wonder why the thing looks like a normal-sized Gundam but just made really big just for kicks, it's because it really wasn't designed to be so big. However, the ending for the story is that things turned out really differently from Tomino's original intentions. The Psycho Gundam was well loved by fans and became a key pillar of Z Gundam iconography, and it's an icon of 80s animation. It was the Psycho Gundam that graced the cover of November 1985's issue of the animation magazine New Type, being the prime eye-catcher for the premier animation magazine. Another side to Tomino's attempt to troll Bandai was to make the Psycho Gundam 40 meters tall so that it would be nearly impossible to make products of it in line with everything else. And that forced the classic 1985 model kit to be segregated into its own 1/300 scale pigeonhole. Yet, nearly 20 years later, that size became the biggest straw of this model kit. See what I did there? Yeah, as it turns out, Murakami's design works really well as a big lumbering giant. Who would have thought? And while I was making this video, this pops up on social media. Nobuyushi Nishimura, an animator central to Sunrise over the years and known to Gundam fans as the character designer of Gundam X, made this reply to an innocuous post stating that he remembers during an animator's briefing that they were told to draw the Psycho Gundam bigger than in the settings. So that's proof again that it was an intentional thing to make the MA as big as they could, and now you know why. So that's what we have here, a supersized robot. The HGUC Psycho Gundam was released in August 2004 and initially sold for a price of 5,000 yen before taxes. This was quite the steep price back in the day, but the Psycho Gundam Mark II doubles that asking price 2 decades later. The box art is illustrated by B-Craft, who did every single Z Gundam HGUC kit box art from around the time, so of course this work is seen on here as well. The gigantic box measures 39 by 31 by 12 centimeters, so that's like 4 smaller HG kits. We don't see many HG kits in this box size, so it's always interesting to see these in stores. The side of the box tells us that this is the 49th release in the HGUC line, and everything else is repeated from the front of the box. The other side is exactly the same. Despite its size, the long side only has a front and back shot, and then it's all in-universe details. The other side has a few studio shots of the different parts, and then it's all legal text. Inside the box, we get the Psycho Gundam spread across 16 gigantic runners with one for the polycaps. Here are the white runners that are all ABS plastic, and here's the rest of them. Here's a closer look at just how big the pieces are, with that torso piece being especially large since this is one continuous thing. And here's something really odd. The yellow runner here for the blade antenna, this is made from polyethylene, so it's the same stuff as the polycaps, which is to say, you can't really paint these. Of course, Bandai wanted the flexibility to protect them from snapping and breaking, but the thing is, this is a solved problem. Other kits of the time, like the Marasai here, has a flexible antenna, and yet this isn't made from polyethylene. This is a blend of softened polystyrene, which does play nicely with paint, so it's not clear why Bandai opted to use polyethylene on such a prominent part of here which can't be painted. Then there's the ABS, of course, which makes up all the joints of this kit. Now, to be fair, I've personally never seen widespread talk online about the ABS parts on this kit breaking, so maybe it's not a huge problem here. ABS issues really can differ a lot kit to kit. Nonetheless, ABS always poses some risk when they age, and Bandai stopped using them for good reason. The polycaps here are a curious set of PC-129. The name means that it's a general set of polycaps for different kits to use, but this set has only been used on the Psycho Gundam and the one single variant of the Psycho Gundam, the Psycho Gym. So if you lose any of the polycaps on this runner, they're not easy to replace. Then you also get a bag of screws here, which are quite normal for a larger kit. Then we get a sheet of foil stickers with one here for the eyes. And these ones here go onto the top of the chest. These go a bit lower onto the sides. These go onto the hood on the back of the MS. These are for the shoulders, one for each side. And then these are for the front of the ankles, one for each side. On this kit, even the instructions are made a bit bigger than normal, and you can see it right here next to the one from the ACT guy. It also comes in a staple booklet, and that's something special as well. Inside the instructions, we get all our studio shots on the back side here, and all that goes together with the color guide at the bottom. Then the inner color pages are for the runners. Then the middle color pages have a breakdown of the Psycho Gundam along with all the flavor text for everything. This kit also has the HGUC redesign sketches done by Hajime Katoki, but without any additional comments from him. The last two color pages are for instructions. And then all the black and white pages are for assembly instructions, as you'd expect. After a bit over 3 hours, we have the Psycho Gundam all put together. This is a large kit, as you surely know, and I can't even fit it into the frame without exposing the sides of my shooting boots, so that's why the sides here are cut off. But it's big, but seen through the screen, you might really think it lacks a sense of scale. We have big, uninterrupted surfaces like this rather shocking one on the back of the shoulders here, and these yellow blocks on the front skirt and the areas around it aren't any better. Big and bare surfaces like these really kill the illusion of size because we'd never built something that big in the real world with a single continuous piece of material. So what other Psycho Gundam products have done is that they've added panel lines on it to give you the idea that this is a very large object stitched together from many smaller components, like on the recently released G-Frame FA Psycho Gundam, which leans really heavily into that method to break up the surfaces into many smaller panels. Now, the kit here does do that on some places like the arms here, but right above it are more bare surfaces on the biceps. And then there are more nearby on the waist and the feet. The thrusters on the back here have more of that baldness with just solid blocks of very basic geometry. Now, I don't mean that this is ugly. I specifically mean that this model doesn't visually look like its size. However, the Katoki retouches on the designs are good though. What he did on this kit seems almost laughably trivial to us because it seems hard to imagine a design without it, but what he did was he made the shoulders bigger. We can better understand the effects of these adjustments if we see what it's like when it's not there. This is the Mobile Suit in Action Psycho Gundam. It's a fine action figure, but it came before this new Katoki retouch. Side by side, notice how the HG kit has larger shoulders. It sounds almost like a silly thing to point out, but really, they're intentionally made bigger to balance them against a really blocky and big torso, and you can see how the smaller shoulders can make the arms seem a little bit noodly, right? After this kit, every single Psycho Gundam product has followed this change, from the Gundam fixed figuration, but of course that did because that's really just the same design, to the most recent G-Frame FA one, and they've all inherited this characteristic. The shoulders also work wonders from a low-down perspective that this mobile armor is meant to be seen from. At the eye level of an 18-meter mobile suit, you'd be looking upwards towards the head of the Psycho Gundam, and those big shoulders push out sideways and fight against the upper torso that's shrinking through the perspective, and it makes it more imposing and intimidating. Now, I know it might sound like I'm grasping at straws here, but trust me that if it isn't there, you'd really notice it now after seeing what it looks like with the bigger shoulders. For colors, we knew from the stickers that a lot of the yellow lines aren't done with part separation, and this wasn't so strange back in 2004. The kit gets the main beats right with coloring, like the beam cannons on the front here being done in red. The head is mostly colored, though the eyes aren't, and that's why I have the eye stickers on. The front camera also isn't colored, but that doesn't have any stickers, strangely. Something worth mentioning here is that the red coloring used on this kit can look a little bit light, and it can even look a little bit cheap. Now, it's not cheap and there's nothing wrong with the quality, but the coloring of it happens to give off that impression, which is an unfortunate side effect of this particular hue of red that this plastic is dyed in. I think overall, even without the stickers on like this, you'd agree that it's perfectly acceptable as a rendition of the Psycho Gundam that we'd be perfectly happy with. An oddity here is that the top of the thighs are supposed to be white, and we have the joint parts that are in white ABS, right? But for some reason, this kit has this bit done in purple, even though it's a completely separate part. And as a side note, we can have a glimpse of what a slightly more modern version of this kit would have looked like, because the Advance of Zeta gigantic arm unit that was released on P Bandai is actually a new mold and it doesn't recycle the arms from this kit. On that, the side panels on the shoulders and the vents are part separated and in yellow. And you have these extra little yellow details on the corners of the forearm that's new to the Advance of Zeta design. Those arms also have a nicer elbow bend, but they removed the transforming features on this kit. And you can swap them directly onto here because they use the exact same joints. As for the not so good parts, this kit certainly has a few. For the seams, there's a really ugly one running along the forearms on the back here, and at the same time, you see these pits here? Those are for the shield to clip onto during the transformation, and they look pretty ugly exposing the insides like that. It would have been way better if they decorated or covered these up with something. The side of the head tries to hide the seam here into the apex of the geometry, but it's not very successful. The shoulders have a nasty seam too that's very visible and cuts across a bunch of geometry, which is never a good thing to handle if you're a builder. The exposed white frame parts on the legs and the back here have a lot of geometry where they could have hidden the seam line, but nope. This seam line cuts straight down the middle in all the sub-assemblies and all the sections, and this really doesn't look great by modern standards. To give this kit some credit, the kit does try to hide the seams away from the front, so the chest and the waist doesn't have visible seams from the front view, and the front of the forearms don't have them either. The front of the lower legs here is a single panel and they tuck away the seam along the sides here, so we don't get an unsightly line splitting the leg right down the middle in the front. Going back to the ugly bits, another blemish you'll find are the fingers here that have these pits where the nub meets the piece. This is quite a common thing with ABS parts and how it flows into the mold, so this is a direct consequence of Bandai choosing to do these parts in ABS. It's lucky that the white color masks this quite well, so if you're looking at it from a distance, you don't always see them. But what's way worse than the shrinkage are the wrists. These are one of the worst parts on this kit. The problem is the hands are on a telescoping hinge that can go out like this for the transformation. When it's in the default position, the joint here does not lock in place, so it just rattles around here. Then there's also the telescoping mechanism itself, which is known to turn loose with time and it can drop down by itself, which is absolutely horrible. I think even in 2004, this degree of wobble isn't really acceptable. And then we have the leg armor down here. These are made to slide for the MF transformation, and maybe you're seeing something of a theme here. They don't lock tight in this MS mode, so they always shift and shuffle around like this. Now, this isn't as bad as the hands, but all the same, they feel really janky and they give you a sense that this kid needed way more care with its details. Oh, but we aren't done yet. The transformation mechanisms continue to grief us with the neck here that's on a sliding platform. Now this does lock in place, and on a new kit this stays up okay, but this has also been known to wear down really quickly if you transform it a lot, and it can cave into the chest when you're trying to handle it even normally. The shoulder armor here could have used a locking mechanism, and when they're in their default position like this, you get this unsatisfying spring where the armor flexes back from its lowest position. So all of this adds up to a nagging feeling of jank. They each feel kind of like a small thing, but with so many of them all around this kit, you can't help but get the impression that this kit really needed a bit more attention and love from the designers. But we do have some nicer bits of this kit to look at, like how the fingers on the hands are articulated. So they have a ball joint down here at the base, and then there's one pivoting joint a little bit higher up. The segments above that are joined together, and the benefit of this is that it can keep the hand from being a little bit too overwhelming to handle. The thumb has a ball joint at the base and there's no additional joint up top. This entire hand is very much like the articulated hands on master grade kits like the MG Gym version 2.0. They still need you to take care of them a little bit because, as these sort of hands tend to do, the fingers can go all gnarly and go sideways on their ball joints if you don't keep them all oriented properly. Sadly, the fingers don't fit the high-grade beam saber effect parts, nor do they fit the larger master grade ones, so there's no easy way to get any beam effects onto the fingers here. This is the main functional weapon on this kit and it has no other handheld weapons. On the head, we have a little bonus and the face part here can actually swing open, and inside we can see the cockpit doors. This is a very thoughtful addition, and even though it's such a small thing, we did see this in the animation and we certainly do like seeing it here on the kit. And having this can keep the kit from being too bare bones. And while we're here, the eyes are actually on a separate piece from the rest of the head, so it's actually really easy to touch up the eyes even if you're only using markers and very rudimentary tools. It's a plain black piece and that's why I put the eye stickers on, or else I'm gonna get angry comments again about why I don't put any stickers on. The blade antennas here have a bit of a hinge showing in the corner here, which is a little sloppy, and I really wish they could have tucked this in a little bit more into the red piece. The shield here is a permanent fixture on the Psycho Gundam, and it mounts with this offset arm where the shield end of it terminates in the ball joint, and the arms end ends with a peg. The ball joint lets you adjust the angle of the shield quite a bit. And because of the transformation, the inside of the shield here are lined with these huge black panels, so it's not all hollowed and uncolored here. Underneath them, the surface is decorated with a lot of molded mechanical details, but the red color of it really hurts the realism, so the black covers on top actually make this shield a whole lot better. The vents on the sides aren't colored and these don't have any stickers on it either, so this is how they're gonna stay. The black portion of the shield is done in plastic and the fitting is very beautiful owing to the much better tolerances at this larger size. The shield of course is pretty heavy, but on a new kit with new polycaps inside, the shield is able to hold its own weight up, but here's a bit of worry here. If you look inside of this polycap, you see how it's all torn up here? This is caused by the ball of the ball joint, which looks fine on this side, but if we turn it around, the other side is hollowed out and this is what rakes up against the polycap and damages it. So if you move it around enough, it's gonna rip the polycap and the damage will build up, so it's best that you fill this ball in and sand it down, and this is quite a big engineering flaw. Another thing we really can't just pass off as limitations from 2004 is that this offset arm sets the shield quite a bit off from the arm and it looks a little bit awkward from the front. They reinforced this piece against the weight of the shield, but that made it really chunky like this, and I'm sure there are better ways around this that didn't have to make the shield hover away from the hand like this. Okay, so for the transformation, I'm gonna ruin it a little bit and tell you that this is a little bit fussy, and if you're doing it for the first time, it's not gonna be fun at all. First, we can do the easy parts and we can sink the neck down into the chest and turn the blade antennas upwards. And yes, in this shot here I didn't lower the head all the way down, and I do it in the later shots. Then we flip up the blades above the shoulders and have them sink into the chest as well. The jank starts to creep in here because when this part is in the lowest position, it doesn't really want to sit up against the side of the head like it should, and it wants to recoil like this, and there's no easy way to have this behave, unfortunately. Next, we have to open the entire torso front to back. This locks together surprisingly cleanly, and you might not have any idea that this whole thing can split open like this. The entire front part opens up like the hood of a car, and inside here there's a really long peg that's tucked away in the back and is textured like a spinal cord. When we pull this down, then the skirt armor section turns so we can position it to receive the long peg. This is what's going to keep this section propped up like a tent. This looks wobbly and unstable, but this works surprisingly well. Next, we can flip up the hood that's on the back here, And this has a fancy two-part swinging arm that opens the front of the face so it won't run into the head. Once the part is in place, we can close the face back over the head. You can see how the shape of everything lines up to form the spire at the top of the MF, even though none of these parts are connected to each other. Then, we lift up this red part on the chest here that's also on a two-part swinging arm, and this lifts the assembly up against the hood to cover up the face. This also doesn't lock into anything else here, so you'll have to be careful not to shift this out of place when you're handling the mobile fortress. Next, we can transform the arms, and it's probably better to take them off like this and handle them separately. We want to pull out the hands at the wrist joint here in the two-part telescoping mechanism. The red portion rotates inwards and the wrist's telescoping joint gives us the range to tuck the hands up to the sides like this. On the shoulders, we want to pull out this triangular part on the biceps, which will extend out in 2 steps like this. Then, flip up the panel on the shoulders like this. Next, we need to lift up the panel on the forearm, and the tabs on here will go onto the panel on the shoulders to form a triangular contour. The geometry here fits surprisingly well, and we've got that signature Murakami pattern of basic shapes. For the legs, we first need to take off these panels here on the side. These are very loose and they routinely fall out when you handle the kit, so this basically will just come off by itself. We can extend the thigh joints and drop them down. And the lower leg joints also unlatch and extend in one single pulling motion. You need to open up the front of the panel of the thighs too to give everything the clearance they need. The lower legs is a mind-boggling jumble of swinging joints and offset arms, and they ultimately fold to bring this tab in the back here up to the thigh, then they go into here. And these don't lock, so this is just a guide of sorts. The armor at the front goes over the tip of the feet like this here. And this all looks simple on camera, but I cut out all the fussing around, and these joints don't really make any sense, and they make me wonder if there really wasn't any simpler way to do this transformation. And the problems start to rear their heads when you see their legs here aren't really locked in place or anything. So you can get this situation where you have to micro adjust every single thing to line up everything nicely. This can get on your nerves a bit because you really do need to nudge and move everything to just the right place yourself. And with how complex the leg frames are, you would think they would lock everything in a set place and you wouldn't need to bother with this so much. To finish off the transformation, we need to split the shield into 2 halves. The inner surface can flip out onto the top, and they each have a clip that will find its corresponding latch to hold them in place. Then it's just a matter of replacing the offset arm, and we do have a second one for the other half of the shield. And then the peg of the offset arm will go into the side of the thighs. And the clip at the top of the shield will lock into those ugly holes on the forearms that we saw earlier. The hole that's for the shield connection can't be covered up with this panel piece, so put that on to whichever arm has the hole exposed. The legs desperately try to keep themselves up, but they do sag a bit, so that makes this mobile fortress mode feel a little bit sloppy. But the problem kinda solves itself with another problem, because this whole kit actually has no way of attaching onto a display base. It doesn't come with one, and many other Zeta kits of the time like the Gaply and the Ashimar came with this display stand which terminates in a slit, which is almost standard for Zeta kits in 2004. And strangely, this kit is not compatible with this. So the mobile fortress must sit on a flat surface or some kind of platform that you make for it, and the legs can't really dangle in midair either way. So the mobile fortress is also quite hard to hold because many places will collapse or shift out of place and can't really hold any weight, like the bridges on the arms here that will sag and fold once you push down on it. The torso can sort of be gripped here, but this can also collapse too if you hold it too tightly. You'll have to explore and discover your own way to grip this tower without it going pear-shaped on you. But to its credit, all those giant holes and gaps are surprisingly well covered up here, even though you'd think they'd be an exposed mess. For how imprecisely everything is held together, they somehow line up okay and not only cover all the insides up, but they also form the completely different contour of the MF mode. And I took the time at the start to talk about Katsushi Murakami, the designer, because this mobile fortress mode is so utterly Murakami, with its crazy angled surface that starts from the top and goes all the way down to the very front to form a big pyramid shape. The arms also have those crazy bridges that are set at the same angle to create those parallel geometric patterns that Murakami loves. I may have called this kit janky, and it is. But one thing you'll have to give it credit for is that this is a faithful translation of Katsushi Murakami's style into a 3D object that's engineered into a transforming kit. I don't think you'll always want this kit in the mobile fortress mode like this. It doesn't have any functioning parts other than looking really otherworldly, but for a selected group of fans who love Murakami's work, this kit's mobile fortress form pays its respects to the legendary designer's style. On to the articulation. The head looks up a little bit, and it looks down hardly any bit at all. It can go all the way around with nothing getting in the way. The shoulder armor can swing up, and that lets you swing the arms up a full 90 degrees. They can swing all the way around with nothing else getting in the way. The rotation here is up on the biceps, and they do go around a full circle. The elbow here can't even manage a 90-degree bend because of the crazy shape of the biceps, but if you move that panel up, you can cheat a little bit more bend out of the joint. The hands can rotate on their peg, and the wrist has an additional fold here. I'll skip the fingers since we've already seen them before. The entire torso is one single block to accommodate the transforming mechanism, so you're not going to get any hip bend or any hip rotation out of this at all, and it's going to be one solid thing. The front skirts can swing upwards up to here, and the side skirts can swing up a very little bit, and the back skirts don't move at all. The legs can be adjusted on their ball joint. They can kick forwards up to here, and they kick backwards a tiny little bit. The knee bend is a little bit sad, and this is as far as it's gonna go. But theoretically, if we exploit the transform mechanism, the legs can get a bend as far as this here. The ankle armor can be adjusted, and the feet's ball joint lifts the feet up and down like this, and it goes side to side this much. The Psycho Gundam always moved like a lumbering giant, and it never did any crazy Gundam Seed style poses, so if we're being charitable, we can say that the articulation here is fine for what the Psycho Gundam needs, but if we're being more objective, this is really just a big Gundam and there's no particular reason why the articulation here needs to be so restrictive. There are little cheats you can do here and there, but the whole thing is pretty locked in and trapped inside its own joints. There's a reason why you always see this kid pose using his hands and fingers or emote, because the tree trunk, waist, and the legs really don't have much they can give you for posing. So the bottom line here is, what's here is enough for a Psycho Gundam, but it's not enough for a Gundam model kit even from 2004. For scale accuracy, I had to make a whole new Hobby Clubhouse scale ruler for this, and with it, we can see that the Psycho Gundam stands at a perfect 40 meters, so this is 1/144 scale to the T. Excellent stuff. And here's the scale height in its mobile fortress mode. Against a setting height of 32.4 meters, this kit nails that size perfectly as well. Absolutely amazing. For size comparisons, here's a lower end benchmark, the entry grade RX-78. And here's the upper end benchmark, the entry grade New Gundam. The RX-78 is less than half the height of the Psycho Gundam, and it just about reaches to its knees, which is the whole reason why we want to own a Psycho Gundam, right? The New Gundam tries its best, but it can only reach the top of the thighs, and the Psycho Gundam just keeps going way past it. This is the sort of display we want to see with the Psycho Gundam, and it has no trouble making everything else around it look very small. So what else looks small? Well, here's the HG Revive Gundam Mark II, looking just like the RX-78 and very tiny. This is a pair many people want to have on display. And here it is next to the really big Bound dock. And here's the Virulent, which is also kinda chunky. And as you can see, it doesn't matter how big any other Z Gundam MS is gonna be, the Psycho Gundam is gonna dwarf them all. But you can also see how interesting this lineup can become with all these crazy sizes and shapes and colors together. And I don't have a Psycho Gundam Mark II, so you're gonna have to watch a review for their side by side. With all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on the Bandai high-grade Universal Century 1144 Psycho Gundam. Number 1, jankiness is rooted in the transformation. Almost every criticism I've raised against the Psycho Gundam in this video falls under some accommodation made for the transformation mechanism, from the rattling hands, to the head platform that can accidentally sink down, to the leg armor that isn't locked down. It's shaky and it's unstable, and all of this is to allow the transformation. And the difficult question is this all worth it? And I think the answer is no. I mean, sure, the transformation is a very important part of this kit, but they can't just put the cart before the horse and have the MS form be so janky like this. And it's not like the finished mobile fortress is now perfect because of all that sacrifice. It's hard to grip without shifting something out of place, and those legs can sag and slip down at any moment. You also have to make small adjustments to align everything when they go out of place when you hold the kit, and there's no convenient way to mount this kit in flight. I think the transformation aspect of this kit was just far too over-engineered, and I'm sure there could have been a better way to achieve all this without giving up so much stability to get us there in the MA mode. Maybe this aspect of the kit was just a little bit too ambitious for 2004. And if you don't end up liking this kit, I believe the jankiness may very well be a big reason why. And number 2, it pays its respects to the Psycho Gundam. Okay, so maybe as a model kit this thing has its shortcomings, but as a character model it certainly has its merits, because with this kit for sure a lot of people will be buying it specifically because it's the Psycho Gundam, and the quality of the kit is not the primary consideration. So on that front, this HGUC Psycho Gundam is good because it preserves the Katsushi Murakami roots in it. Using the G-Frame FA figure once again as an example, it's a fine product and even avoids being under-detailed like on our kit, but I think we can all agree that it loses the purity of the lines and the geometry of Murakami's original design. Once you know the man behind the design and his style, and how this is Tomino's big, grand, defiant f*** you to Bandai, then you will ask the question, does this kit embody all of that? And my answer here would be yes, very much so, and that's wonderful. And number 3, this kit is hard to recommend today. Outside of point number 2, I don't think this is a kit I'd recommend to most people today. This kit isn't as absurdly expensive like new kits are, but it still isn't cheap, and for that price it's pretty limited in what it offers you. It doesn't like to be posed, and it doesn't like to be transformed, and it doesn't have a lot of accessories or a ton of crazy gimmicks. So when this is removed from the cultural weight it has in Gundam history, purely as a model kit, I can't find a lot of compelling reasons for a lot of people to get this. Maybe to add some variety to your display, perhaps? But even for that, I think the Psycho Gundam Mark II is now a much better choice because it looks so evil and it conveys so much more character, and it sure has gimmicks up the wazoo. Now, I'm not saying this kit is trash, not at all, but if you're simply looking for an interesting model kit to enjoy, there are a world of options at this price point, and the Psycho Gundam really just isn't very competitive in this realm against them at all. So that's a review of the HG Psycho Gundam. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of exactly what this kit is and what it isn't, so that when you decide to get one, you can be sure that this is exactly the cultural icon of anti-Bandai rebellion that you want on your shelf. Thank you so much for watching. Support this channel by becoming a member here on YouTube or over on Patreon. And come look us up on social media for updates on upcoming videos, links are in the description below. This video was made with the support of the following members: Skep, David Bitten, Mac Nova, and welcome to my very first YouTube member, RPPP. Thank you for your continued support, and lastly, thank you for enjoying this video, and I'll see you next time.